We are joined this half hour by Delegate S. Chris Anders. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you.
Chris, you just finished your first term, your first session. What was your biggest surprise down there? What was the biggest thing that you didn't expect?
Well, I wasn't really surprised because I've worked in politics for 15 years before I was elected. So I'm used to how the legislative process works. I spent a lot of time in state capitals, so I kind of understood everything. I think the biggest impact for me, to be absolutely honest, is since we were married, my wife and I had spent one night apart till I was elected, and suddenly I'm down at the state capitol for months on end. So
that was change, isn't it?
That is life-changing.
Commitment.
Yeah, big commitment.
Did you end up? Her coming down to see you coming up to see her? Was it kind of, did you meet in the middle?
You meet in the middle type thing. Of course, you go home every weekend that you can if we don't have anything on the plate. And then some days she would come down because she can work virtual office now, so she'd stay for a while. And then sometimes we meet in the middle in Morgantown.
Okay.
Just to have dinner. So
that works.
Yep.
Obviously, you've been very vocal since you've been back. You are not afraid to mince words. So let's get into it.
Okay.
Couple of things that you've been very vocal about since coming back is obviously the 1% sales tax for counties, or the ability to put it on the ballot. You had a number of amendments on that bill didn't go anywhere, it didn't get to the floor. Explain your position on that and what you think on that.
Well, I mean, it's a real basic position. And the position is simply this. We are taxed way too much already. Our founding fathers rebelled against a 3% tax on tea, okay? And we're now, if you take all the taxes that we pay, the average West Virginian, probably around 30% of their gross income goes to government, not counting the inflation tax, which we all know is just government spending. They print more money, and of course everything you buy goes up in price. And when that happens, and I see so many people struggling, the last thing you want to see is anybody pay any more taxes. And I made a pledge on the campaign trail. I would do everything I could, not only to stop new taxes, but to eliminate as many as possible.
John?
Chris, your position to me is intellectually defensible, except now it's intellectually defensible if this were a proposal simply to pass a tax, and that's it. But it isn't. It's a proposal to let the voters decide whether to tax themselves. What's wrong with that?
Well, when the Constitution was signed, and Ben Franklin was asked, what type of government do we have? Do we have a democracy? He said, no, we have a republic if you can keep it. And that's the difference, okay? The Founding Fathers did not believe in pure democracy, which is what that would be, where 51% of the people could make 49% do what they wanted. We're a republic where individual rights stand above everything else. Not only that, but I've seen ballot issues many times. We've all seen ballot issues. And what happens is one side will outspend the other. They'll spin the issue. They'll do everything they can, and eventually they'll end up winning on that issue. So voting for the mechanism would be the same as saying, okay, you can tax the people more.
So I'm hearing you, I think, saying that your opposition to that aspect of it is simply an opposition to direct democracy.
Well, obviously, because the Founding Fathers were opposed to direct democracy.
I just want to make sure. Yeah,
they said democracy was mob rule many, many times. If you go back and read the Federalist Papers, and it is. If you have 51% of the people deciding something, like if they decide suddenly tomorrow that they want to, 51% doesn't want to have AR-15s in the country, then they can take away your individual rights to own an AR-15.
Oh, I would dispute that, because you have certain rules in the Constitution that say a popular decision cannot go beyond the parameters that are set by the Constitution.
So you're saying that the AR-15s are protected by the Second Amendment?
Yes.
Okay.
I've always said that.
Okay. That's a good point to hear.
So Marty Gerhardt made this point to me when we were talking about this subject, and he said, if you give a county commission the ability to put this on the ballot, they will run it on every ballot until it passes.
Right.
And every county will run it no matter whether they need it or not. And I thought that was a pretty valid argument. Height and I talked about it. So I thought there'd need to be guidelines in that you only have to do something like that. But I thought it was a pretty valid argument that if you give the county the ability to put it on the ballot, they will put it on the ballot each and every year until it passes.
Right, because most government have an addiction to OPM, which is other people's money. And they're always looking to get more and more money, to expand more and more programs, because the more programs politicians provide, the more they can get reelected.
Yeah,
John?
I will tell you, for the 6 years that I spent in the legislature, I never supported the local 1% sales tax. It was always a point of contention between me and Mr. Stubblefield. I never really supported that 1% sales tax. I had the same view. If we give the county commissions the ability to tax, they would tax. Now I'm sitting on the other side of the fence as a county commissioner, and I understand that county commissions are, there's a real attitude in the legislature to keep counties poor. And there really is. And they keep counties poor so the state can keep their thumb on them. And counties do not have a lot of ways to raise revenue. There's really not. I could sit down with Mr. Anders and show him the budget, and once everything's paid for, and there's not a lot of money left. There's about $2 million left that's in funds that can be kind of divvied out to organizations that we're not responsible to fund, but we still help, like the Senior Center, CASA, and some of those things. So I think the way that Berkeley County Commission, and I can only speak for Berkeley County Commission, and I can only speak for myself, had it very narrowly defined that it had to be on a referendum, and then once it passed the referendum, it was clearly spelled out what the money would be spent on. It would be spent for public services and safety items. It wasn't going to be for, shiny new buildings and new things and such. It was going to be, our sheriff's department is grossly undersized because we don't have the state police that we should have from the state level to back us up. And you're just a growing county, and we need lots of services. And we continue to go back to the same people over and over and over for those services, which is our property owners, for our real property taxes. And the real property taxes collects a lot of money, but 80% of that, I've heard, I don't know what the real calculations are. Somewhere between 77 cents and 80 cents of every one of those dollars goes to the school board. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that's a thing. That's how it happens.
It exists.
It exists, right? So now the county's trying to function on 20 to 23 cents of every dollar to try to meet the services. And as a growing community, our services need to expand. And I certainly understand what Mr. Anders, what Delegate Anders is saying here about continue to taxes and grow taxes, but it's not 1776 anymore. I understand the Constitution, and I back it 100%, but we do need to provide services for our community. I think that the community deserves those services, fire, police, EMS, and being able to provide what they need. Now, people that are moving here from Maryland and Virginia or all points need to understand that you're coming here for the milk and honey because our taxes are much lower. We're not going to be able to provide the services, say, as Loudoun County or Fairfax County, because we don't have that tax base. So I thought the way that the bill was structured of being a referendum only and being very narrowly directed was a reason why that I could get behind it.
Mm-hmm. So, Chris, my follow-up would be this, and I am certainly no history buff, and I always come to you. You and I have had many conversations. You are definitely more to the right than I am, but you and I have always had a civil relationship and worked together, had good conversations down in the legislature. My question to you is, I understand the revolutionary thought in the Constitution, but we didn't have roads, and we didn't have ambulances, we didn't have hospitals, and all these other things that we have now, internet and gasoline and all this other stuff. How do you correlate between that and our founding fathers, framing the Constitution based on the time that it was, and how do you look at it now, 2025, and where's that middle ground, if you will?
Well, you have to embrace the spirit of the Constitution and what their goals were. Now, keep in mind, the Constitution was amended. Prior to 1913, we did not have the direct taxation of American citizens, and we still fought and won 7 wars. Right? We still had hospitals, we had roads, we had cars, we had trains, we were getting into aviation. We didn't need that then. But the only reason they instituted the income tax was it passed right after the Federal Reserve Act. And when they gave control of our monetary system to the world's largest banking cartel known as the Federal Reserve, which controls our money supply. And so when we work to take our dollar off of the gold standard and instead hand it over to these banks, the only thing that gave the dollar any value was the labor of the American citizens. So they had to do a direct tax then. All right, and of course, I'm always about ending the Federal Reserve. I'm always about going back to the gold standard because I hate watching the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, because, as the Federal Reserve prints money, it goes to the richest first. And, we get it, and it's worth less as time goes on. But, there is a difference, yes, but at the same time, the Founding Fathers never saw a government that would take care of us from the cradle to the grave. We were individual, responsible, self-sufficient people, and that's where they built our government. And, often, at times I've made people mad, like, okay, you're mad about taxes, but at the same time, you're taking all these government services, right? You have to, if you have to pay to play. So if you really want to, live in, lower tax where you have to be self-sufficient, because individual liberty, including your economic liberty, means personal responsibility over your own life.
John? Mike, I wanted to ask you really quickly back on the this 1% sales tax for counties thing. You mentioned, I think, a very important consideration when you said that there would be a tendency on the part of some levying bodies, county commissions, to keep running if you ran the referendum, it fails, run it back again, and 2 years later. Wouldn't that be solved if you wrote into the law a provision that said, if it fails, then you have to wait X number of years before you run it again? Well,
I certainly think if it had a snowball's chance in hell of getting through that would have to be something.
Okay,
and it's not my bill, though, so please.
Yeah, I just was curious, yeah.
It's one of those things. I have long arguments and conversations with very good friends of mine. But let's switch gears a little bit, because we do have a couple of different subjects I want to touch on, because Chris has been vocal on vaccines. Chris, you have said you are going to sue the Berkeley County Board of Education. Is that correct?
Not me personally.
Not
me personally, but there are now two sets of my constituent parents that have been denied.
Okay.
And we are talking with the same attorneys that sued Raleigh County. And we're going to move forward with that. We're waiting because in September, for those that need the background on this, the governor put out an executive order saying philosophical and religious exemptions must be honored. And the legislature failed to pass that. But the executive order, the governor said, still stood. And
based on the RFRA bill that we passed the year before.
In 2023, right?
Yep.
And so then the school board changed direction 100. They were going along with that, and then they changed direction 180 degrees and said, no, we're not going to accept this. Right now we have a power play between the state school board and the governor. Now, I will say that the county school boards are stuck. Do they listen to the governor in the 2023 law that was passed, which the judge just upheld in Raleigh County, or do they listen to the state elected school board? But my opinion, I've always been very vocal on this. I'm a big believer in individual liberty. You have a right to say what goes into your own body and your children's body. And I don't think you should have to have even a religious reason. You can just say, no, I don't want that in my children. So I will fight and use every tool in the box possible to make that happen, especially since now I have constituents who are being denied from Berkeley County. I hope Berkeley County, we're going to win in the end. I hope Berkeley County stops, spending money fighting against it and realizes that we're going to win again, because the case is going to come up again in September.
Do you think this is going to happen county by county all throughout the state?
Well, unless they wake up and realize, they're going to lose in the end, it's going to have to go that way. And that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, I would push back just a little bit and say if the school board is following the unelected appointed school boards, they're actually following the law. The law has not changed. The legislature did not pass the bill. They did not change that bill. So they are following what is in law. Now, the governor does have his order in place. So there is a struggle between what is in law, what the legislature did not pass, and what the governor wants. So I don't know how this is going to play out. I've always supported vaccines. I think vaccines are very important, and that's the difference between me and Chris, and that's fine. But I don't know how it's going to play out, if it's going to go county to county. But I think I was a little, I understood what Raleigh County did because it was very narrow. It was very narrow to just those few students. It wasn't open to the whole county. Now, maybe you will have that very narrow decision made in Berkeley County for a few students. I don't think that the county is going to open it up to everyone in the county. So that's my thought, but I don't know where that goes.
Yeah, and I agree with John Hardy. This is about more than just vaccines. It is a question of, can the governor issue an executive order that overrides a statute?
Right.
And I believe the state Supreme Court will say, no, the governor cannot do that. It's always been traditional that chief executives, President of the United States, governors, mayors in a strong mayor form of government, can issue an executive order in the absence of a statute, saying one way or another what the law is. But the executive cannot issue an executive order overriding a statute, and I think the court will say that.
But it has been judged already by the judge in Raleigh County in that very narrow case. It's going to be expanded to a class action suit next, okay? That the 2023 law did change so that the governor didn't issue.
I think that's
he
the
was
key.
based upon the 23 law, and saying and the big problem I have is these unelected school board members at the state level making these decisions. They have zero voter accountability.
Well, that's something we need to change.
Something has to change with that.
Sure. And I don't think we're opening Pandora's box here. There's other states that are doing this, and I've always been a supporter of vaccines, but I think if this moves forward, there are plenty of other states that are already doing this, and they have the exceptions, and the sky's not falling.
I'm a quiet no on the floor.
I think we're going to be okay.
I've told people, that based on my history, I'd be a hypocrite.
And keep in mind, my position is I'm not against vaccines.
Sure.
Now, obviously, I'm against vaccine mandates. There's a big difference there.
So I have a question I'd like to ask, and Chris represents my old district. I represented that district for 6 years, and I loved it very much. And I already know the answer to this. Do you take LEDA funds? Do you use any LEDA funds?
No, I did not.
You do not. So
no, because I actually oppose LEDA funds because I believe they're earmarks, and it's politicians buying votes with other people's money.
Right. I find that I brought a lot of money back to Berkeley County from Charleston. It always did my heart good to bring money back from Charleston to be able to give that money to local organizations. So I would, you have your convictions, I have my convictions, but I did a lot of good with that money. I gave it for children's dental equipment. I gave it to Horses' Hearts, who helped with veterans and helped with children, and a lot of and that money's in the budget, and I would encourage you to try to use some of that money, but maybe you don't want to. But my second question is, and I'm sorry, I'm going to take a lot of time because Chris represents my own.
Minutes.
Yeah. So you have talked a lot about ending the hated rain tax in Berkeley County.
That is correct.
And it is the most hated thing in Berkeley County. And as a county commissioner, I hate it. I will tell you that every county commissioner hates it. We don't like it. It's mandated to us. But how do you turn rhetoric, and I don't mean that in a derogatory term, but how do you turn rhetoric of saying that I'm going to end the rain tax into action? Because it's neither a local decision or a state decision. It's a federal decision from an overreaching agency that has made that rule. So that is under the Clean Water Act that's been made by the EPA, which is a rule. Congress has failed to act on it, as Congress has failed to act on many things. It is not a law, it is a rule. What is Chris Anders' plan to get rid of the Berkeley County the Berkeley County rain tax without Berkeley County being fined $50,000 a day if we do not have a funding process in place?
Well, that's where there's a lot of smoke. But the fact of the matter is, first of all, I did introduce legislation to ban these taxes in West Virginia, right? Because also Huntington has it. They have the rain tax as well.
There's 52 municipalities that have it in one county.
Many different federal regulations and federal court rulings. Not one single ruling says anywhere on paper that you have to charge the citizens for this. They say, if you're in the MS4 program, which Berkeley County did enroll in, and there's also a little problem with that I'll explain in a second. But the fact of the matter is you can do the minimum that they requested to get the MS4 designation, that the low dollar amount, not buying new vehicles, not doing everything else. I see the Martinsburg City stormwater management running around in, right?
It's the city, we're the county.
Right, I know. But they're piggybacking on that. So, but the thing is, you don't have to charge. There's no federal requirement to charge a fee for this, okay? Also, the big problem with it is you have to be an urban county, right? You have to be an urban county. The last I checked, Berkeley County is not considered an urban county to be part of the MS4. So something weird went on there, many years ago. But in the end, the county doesn't legally have to charge the fee. They just have to have the minimum program to satisfy that. And a good friend of mine, Dave Warrington, is now chief counsel of the White House. And I'm pretty sure if they went after Berkeley County for getting rid of the tax, I could probably give Dave a quick signal message, and he would talk to the president about this.
Well, that's all good, but I say as a county commissioner, we have a fiduciary responsibility to meet what is put upon us by the state DEP, and that there's one permit for the state. The state DEP gives that out. There's, like I said, there's 52 or 53 municipalities that have that. Berkeley County is the only county that had that, and we've had great discussions with Senator Capito's office, or actually with the one of the committees that she sits on, and trying to back out of that. And it's kind of one of those things like, once you're in it, you can't get out.
Right, but again, you don't have to charge the fee. You just have to do the minimum.
But you have to meet the fiduciary responsibility of what is, you have to pay. The county has
to pay it right now.
Well, they have to support a small MS4 program. Yeah.
So I want to change. We got 3 minutes left, but this is kind of piggybacking on what John said. How? I know you've been very vocal about the Mars line or the whatever.
Oh, yes.
Whatever they're the transmission lines that are coming from Pennsylvania, and they're trying to get them to Virginia. It's going to go in front of the PSC. Can the state say no? I know
Montague. They can say no.
Can they say no to a federal mandate? Like if the feds actually do this, what can the state do?
It's not a federal mandate as is right now. They're looking to explore it. The PSC can oppose it. Okay. Unfortunately, that's another unelected board we have in West Virginia, which is another problem that we have. But the fact of the matter is, all this is Virginia wants to continue to get all this tax revenue from data centers, right? And they've gone to the Green New Pipe Dream, and they can't generate their own energy. So what they want to do is pipe energy in from West Virginia, which means West Virginia property owners lose their property to eminent domain.
Well, it's the utility companies are pushing it because they want to sell the power, right? That's kind of...
Well, I understand wanting to sell the power, but we could also sell the power for ones here, too.
Absolutely.
So if we get the tax revenue, we can eliminate the income tax.
If these transmission lines had the ability to say there's 2 new power plants along those transmission lines and 16 substations so that we can build in West Virginia and get some of that revenue, would that change your mind?
You're still using eminent domain for private corporation profit, okay? And property rights are one of the foundational principles of our republic. But the interesting thing about this, there's no off-ramps planned. There's nothing that's going to benefit West Virginia whatsoever. It's all going to Virginia.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I'm just throwing it out there. John, we've got a minute 20.
Yeah, a couple of quick points on this. One is, yes, they can be beat. About 20 years ago, Path and Trail were beaten. It's a very similar thing.
Okay.
So it can be done. Now, I'm going to push back on Chris calling this green energy. If it's coming from West Virginia, it is most likely more like black energy or gray energy.
I think he meant they've gone green, so they need our energy.
Yeah, because they can't produce their own green because they can't produce it themselves, so they need our energy.
Yes.
But we're not District 12 in the Hunger Games, okay? We're not supplying power to the Capitol.
All right. Thank you so much for coming in. We've got about 30 seconds. Anything else? 30 seconds. Anything else you want to share with our listeners?
No, just that it's been an honor and an experience to be down there and to be fighting. I've made promises. I kept my promises, and I'll never get twisted around. I believe that in the American spirit and the spirit of the Constitution. So.
Thank you very much, Chris. We'll be right back after these messages. You are listening to WRNR and TV 10.